It was a quiet morning in the small town where the janitor lived. The sun was just starting to rise, casting a soft orange glow over the streets. He had already been awake for a few hours, cleaning up the kitchen and getting his child ready for school. Being a single dad was never easy. Every day felt like a balancing act between work, parenting, and keeping his small apartment in order. But he did it all with a sense of pride, even when it left him exhausted. After making sure his child had everything needed for the day, he kissed them goodbye and stepped outside. The air was crisp, and he could feel the cool breeze against his face. He liked these quiet moments in the morning, the few minutes when the world felt calm before the rush began. He walked down the street toward the diner he always stopped at before work. It was a small, familiar place, with a faded sign and a bell on the door that jingled every time someone entered. The smell of fresh coffee and warm bread welcomed him as he pushed the door open. The diner was just starting to fill with early customers. There were a few regulars sipping their coffee and reading newspapers, and the waitress waved at him as he entered. He nodded back, his mind already thinking about the day ahead. He liked sitting at the corner table near the window, where he could watch the street and enjoy a quiet breakfast. Before heading to the high school where he worked, he ordered his usual: scrambled eggs, toast, and a cup of black coffee. While waiting for his meal, he looked around the diner, greeting a few familiar faces. He always enjoyed these small interactions, even if they were brief. They reminded him that he was part of a community, even if life outside the diner could feel overwhelming at times. As he sipped his coffee and waited for his food, something unusual caught his eye. A woman had just walked in, and she immediately stood out. She carried herself with a presence that was hard to ignore. Her uniform was crisp and immaculate, adorned with badges and insignias that hinted at a life of discipline and responsibility. He had seen people in uniforms before, but there was something about her that commanded attention without a word. She walked to an empty booth and sat down, placing her bag beside her with careful precision. He couldn't help but glance at her more than once. There was a quiet confidence in the way she held herself, a calm strength that seemed to fill the space around her. It was rare to see someone like this in a place as ordinary as his morning diner. He wondered what had brought her to this small town, and why she had chosen this particular spot for her breakfast. Curiosity tugged at him, but he reminded himself to stay polite and not stare. The woman ordered a cup of coffee and a small breakfast. She seemed focused on something in her hand, possibly reading a message or reviewing notes. There was a seriousness about her, but it was not unkind. She seemed deeply committed to her work, carrying the weight of responsibility with grace. The janitor found himself admiring that, wondering what it would be like to face the challenges she must deal with every day. He tried to focus on his own breakfast, but his mind kept drifting back to her. There was a strange feeling, a sense that this encounter was going to be different from anything he had experienced before. He wondered if she noticed him looking, but he quickly shook off the thought. People had their own lives, and it was not his place to intrude. Yet something inside him urged him to speak, to do something that felt bold and spontaneous. His food arrived, steaming and fragrant. He thanked the waitress and started eating, trying to concentrate on the simple pleasure of a warm meal. But every now and then his eyes flicked toward the woman in uniform. She had taken out a small notebook and was making notes, her focus unwavering. He found it fascinating how someone could appear so strong and composed, even in the quiet of a diner. It made him think about his own life, about the challenges he faced as a single parent, and how he had to stay strong for his child every day. He thought about the small apartment he returned to each evening, the piles of laundry, the homework to help with, and the meals to prepare. Life was never easy, but it was filled with moments of purpose and love. Seeing someone so different, yet carrying herself with such poise, made him reflect on his own strengths. He realized that, even in his ordinary life, he had resilience and courage, just in different ways. The diner was filling up now, the sounds of chatter and clinking dishes creating a comforting background noise. The woman glanced up from her notebook and caught his eye. For a moment, there was a connection, a silent acknowledgement of each other's presence. He felt a sudden urge to break the ordinary routine, to step out of the usual and do something unexpected. The thought startled him, but it also excited him. He took a deep breath and decided to act. It was a bold move, perhaps foolish, but he felt an inner confidence urging him forward. He stood up, leaving a few bills on the table for his breakfast, and walked toward her booth. The diner seemed to quiet down for a moment as he approached. He smiled, trying to convey friendliness and honesty without overstepping. "Excuse me," he said, his voice steady despite the rapid beating of his heart. She looked up, her expression curious but composed. "I know this might sound strange, but I feel like you shouldn't be here alone right now. You're coming with me." She blinked, a mix of surprise and amusement crossing her face. No one had ever spoken to her like that before, especially not a stranger in a small diner. She studied him for a moment, sensing something genuine in his tone. There was a straightforwardness, an honesty that made her pause. She could sense that he meant no harm, that this was not an intrusion, but an unusual gesture of concern. The janitor smiled again, his own nerves settling as he saw a hint of curiosity in her eyes. He extended his hand in a friendly, non-threatening manner. "I just want to make sure you're safe. It's a quiet town, but sometimes it's best not to be alone." She hesitated, then laughed softly. It was a warm, genuine sound that eased some of the tension. "You are certainly bold," she said, her voice carrying authority, but also a touch of amusement. "Most people would never approach me like this." He shrugged, trying to appear casual, even though his heart was pounding. "I don't follow most people. I just try to do what feels right. Come on, let's get you somewhere safe." There was a moment of silence, a small pause in which they both assessed each other. She studied his eyes, looking for signs of deception or malice, but found none. There was a kindness there, a simple honesty that was refreshing. She realized that, despite the strangeness of the situation, there was no danger in following him. Finally, she nodded. "All right," she said, a small smile forming. "Lead the way." He returned her smile, feeling a mix of relief and excitement. He led her to the door, opening it with a polite gesture. The bell jingled as they stepped outside, and the crisp morning air greeted them. He walked beside her, pointing out landmarks and familiar spots as they made their way through the quiet streets. There was an ease in their conversation, a natural rhythm that made the situation feel less unusual and more like the beginning of an unexpected connection. As they walked, he shared small details about his life, the work he did, the challenges of being a single parent, and the simple joys that came with raising his child. She listened, intrigued by his perspective and the sincerity in his words. She realized that despite her own high-ranking position and disciplined lifestyle, there was something grounding about his life, a sense of purpose and authenticity that she admired. The walk continued, filled with light conversation and occasional laughter. He pointed out a few local spots, small cafes and parks that held memories for him. She appreciated the glimpse into a world so different from her own, a life that was ordinary in some ways, but rich with human connection and genuine emotion. It made her reflect on her own life, where duty and responsibility often left little room for simple pleasures. By the time they reached her destination, a sense of mutual respect and understanding had begun to form. She thanked him for his kindness, acknowledging the unusual but heartfelt gesture. He smiled, feeling a quiet satisfaction. It wasn't about recognition or reward. It was about doing what felt right in the moment, about connecting with another human being in a genuine way. As they parted ways, there was a sense that this encounter, brief as it was, had left a mark on both of them. He returned to his routine with a renewed sense of purpose, carrying the memory of the morning with him. And she, despite the demands of her position, felt a rare warmth and appreciation for the simplicity and honesty of his actions. The morning continued, the town bustling into its daily rhythm. Yet for both of them, the encounter at the diner remained a small but meaningful story. A reminder that human connection could appear in the most unexpected places, and that courage, honesty, and kindness could bridge worlds that seemed completely apart. The diner was slowly filling with the morning crowd, but the janitor and the woman in uniform continued their quiet conversation. The usual clatter of dishes and low hum of chatter seemed to fade into the background. It was as if, for a moment, the diner had shrunk into a smaller space just for the two of them. He noticed the small details, the way she sipped her coffee carefully, the precise movements as she flipped pages in her notebook. Everything about her was deliberate, calculated, and full of purpose. He decided to break the ice further, not wanting the moment to awkward or tense. "You must travel a lot," he said, glancing at her uniform, recognizing some of the insignias, even without knowing their exact meaning. "I can tell from the way you carry yourself." She raised an eyebrow, slightly surprised at his observation. "I do," she admitted. "It comes with the job. A lot of responsibility, a lot of decisions that affect more people than you can imagine." He nodded thoughtfully. He could sense the weight she carried. It reminded him of the responsibilities he bore as a parent, the constant worry and effort to keep a child safe and cared for. His own challenges were different, smaller in scale perhaps, but no less significant in their emotional impact. They talked about their mornings, sharing small stories from their daily lives. He described the quiet chaos of getting his child ready for school, the breakfast routines, and the small moments of joy that made the effort worthwhile. She listened intently, nodding occasionally and asking gentle questions. She seemed genuinely interested, not just polite conversation. As he spoke, he noticed a subtle shift in her demeanor. The rigid, disciplined exterior softened, revealing glimpses of humor, warmth, and humanity. He found himself smiling at the rare glimpses of the person behind the uniform. It was easy to imagine her commanding a room, making difficult decisions, yet here she was, quietly engaging in a conversation like anyone else. He tried not to stare, but there was a magnetic quality about her, an aura that made her presence impossible to ignore. He found himself thinking about the stark differences between their lives. She had traveled the world, faced challenges he could only imagine, and yet here she was in a small-town diner, sharing a quiet moment with a man who cleaned floors and taught children about math and history. Life had a strange way of bringing people together. He shared some of the humorous incidents from his work, like the time a student had accidentally locked him in a classroom, or when a mischievous kid had hidden all the chalks before a lesson. She laughed, genuinely amused by his stories, the sound light and refreshing. For a moment, the difference in their worlds didn't matter. They were two people sharing human experiences, finding connection in simple honesty and openness. She reciprocated by sharing small anecdotes from her career. She spoke carefully, not giving away secrets, but enough to reveal the pressures of leadership and the constant need for vigilance. He listened, fascinated by the discipline and focus it took to perform such a demanding job. He realized that courage could take many forms. Sometimes it was leading fleets and making life-altering decisions. Sometimes it was raising a child alone, keeping them safe, and giving them love despite exhaustion. Their breakfast plates were cleared away by the friendly waitress, but they continued talking. He gestured toward the window, pointing out a small playground where children were starting to gather after school drop-offs. "See that? That's where my kid loves to play. I try to spend as much time there as I can, even when work gets tough. She nodded, appreciating his dedication. It's admirable. Most people would complain about the exhaustion, but you seem to embrace it. He shrugged, a modest smile on his face. I guess you do what you have to do. And honestly, it feels good to see the little moments make a difference. They both fell silent for a few moments, just observing the diner and the life around them. He could sense her thinking, perhaps reflecting on her own life and choices. It was rare to find someone willing to share their thoughts so openly, especially someone who lived under such high expectations. He felt a growing respect for her, not for her rank or achievements, but for her ability to carry responsibility with integrity. A sudden thought came to him, breaking the comfortable silence. Would you like to take a walk? He asked, hoping it wouldn't sound too forward. It's a nice morning, and sometimes the air helps clear the mind. She considered for a moment, then nodded. Sure, she said. I could use a break from paperwork. They stepped out into the fresh morning air, leaving behind the diner's warmth for the crisp clarity of the streets. He led the way, walking at a relaxed pace, allowing her to take in the surroundings. The town was waking up, neighbors exchanging greetings, the occasional dog barking in the distance, and the faint hum of cars beginning their daily commute. As they walked, he continued to share small stories from his life, giving her a glimpse into the world he inhabited. She listened intently, occasionally laughing or nodding in acknowledgement. There was a simplicity to his life that she found grounding, a contrast to the structured and high-stakes environment she usually navigated. For the first time in a long while, she felt able to breathe without expectation or judgment. They passed a small park, and he gestured toward it. My kid loves this place. We come here whenever we can. It's not much, but it's ours. She smiled, imagining the joy and energy children brought into the world. It seems wonderful, she said. Simple things like this are easy to overlook in my line of work. They continued walking, the conversation flowing naturally. They discussed dreams, small hopes, and the little victories that often went unnoticed. He spoke of the satisfaction of a job well done, of seeing a child understand something for the first time, or watching a student achieve something they thought impossible. She spoke of the pride in accomplishing a challenging task, the satisfaction in knowing her decisions impacted lives positively, and the quiet moments of reflection that often went unseen. At one point, they stopped at a small bench under a tree. He gestured for her to sit, and she did, grateful for the chance to pause. The sun was higher now, casting warm rays over the quiet street. They sat side by side, sharing the silence, a comfortable presence between them. No words were needed for a while, just the understanding that they were both human beings navigating the challenges of life. He glanced at her, noticing the subtle signs of stress in her eyes and posture. He felt an instinct to reassure her, to provide some comfort, even though he barely knew her. You don't always have to carry everything alone, he said gently. It's okay to take a step back sometimes. She looked at him, a mixture of surprise and appreciation in her expression. No one had spoken to her like that in a long time, recognizing the humanity beneath the uniform. It was a simple statement, but it carried weight. For someone accustomed to command and authority, it was rare to hear empathy without expectation or obligation. They continued their walk, moving toward the quieter streets of the town. Along the way, they shared small observations about life, noticing the flowers blooming along the sidewalks, the way the sunlight played on the rooftops, and the rhythm of everyday life that often went unnoticed. It was a grounding experience, reminding them both of the simple joys and beauty that existed even in ordinary places. As they approached her destination, a sense of mutual respect and understanding had grown. She realized that this encounter, unexpected and unusual, had offered her a rare glimpse into a different way of living, one grounded in simplicity, honesty, and human connection. He had no idea of the world she commanded, yet he approached her with courage and kindness that made her feel seen and understood. She thanked him quietly, a genuine smile on her face. "This has been unexpected, but I appreciate it." "Thank you." He nodded, a quiet pride in his expression. It was nothing, really. Just a moment of honesty and human connection. Sometimes that's all it takes. They parted ways, both carrying a sense of warmth and reflection. For him, the encounter had been a reminder of the unexpected ways life could surprise him, the chance to connect with someone from a world so different from his own. For her, it was a moment of grounding, a reminder that beneath the responsibilities and expectations, there was room for simple kindness and genuine interaction. As he walked back toward his daily routine, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. Life as a janitor and a single parent was still challenging, but he carried with him the memory of that morning, the quiet diner, the unexpected conversation, and the human connection that had briefly bridged two very different worlds. And she, returning to her responsibilities, carried the memory of a simple act of courage and honesty, a reminder that even in the janitor walked beside the woman as they continued their journey through the town. The morning had grown warmer, and the sun highlighted the small details of their surroundings, the way leaves rustled in the breeze, children laughing as they walked to school, and neighbors exchanging brief greetings as they went about their day. Each small detail seemed to carry a story of its own, and the janitor felt compelled to point out the things that made his town feel alive and personal. "See that old bakery?" he said, nodding toward a building with faded paint. "My kid loves their cinnamon rolls. It's a little treat we sometimes get after school." She glanced at it, smiling at the thought of simple pleasures. "It's nice," she said. "The world feels too big sometimes. Little things like that make it manageable." He nodded. That was exactly how he felt most days. Life could feel overwhelming, but it was the small victories and joys that kept him going. They walked in comfortable silence for a few moments, each lost in thought, before he decided to share something more personal. "I know it must sound silly," he said, glancing at her, "but there are days when I feel like I'm failing. Balancing work and raising a child alone is hard. Sometimes I just wonder if I'm doing enough." She looked at him, her expression softening. "I understand that feeling. Leadership, responsibility, and expectations, they weigh heavily. Sometimes you don't even notice the burden until it presses down on you." He was surprised by her empathy, the ease with which she connected with his struggles, despite the differences in their lives. It reminded him that everyone had challenges, whether obvious or hidden beneath a uniform or behind a smile. Her acknowledgement made him feel seen, and that small recognition was powerful. They walked past a small playground where children were starting their recess. The sounds of laughter and squealing swings filled the air. He pointed toward a group of kids playing a game of tag. "My kid is usually running around there somewhere. They have so much energy. I barely keep up sometimes," he said with a chuckle. She laughed softly. "Energy and innocence, things I haven't seen up close in a while. It's refreshing." The conversation continued, flowing naturally as they moved through the town. He spoke of the joys of his job, the moments when a child's eyes lit up with understanding, or when a student surprised him with creativity and insight. She listened intently, nodding and asking questions that showed genuine interest. He was struck by how easily she could set aside her authority and connect on a human level. In turn, she shared small glimpses of her own life. She spoke carefully, not revealing sensitive details, but enough to paint a picture of a demanding career filled with responsibility, pressure, and moments of triumph and doubt. He admired her dedication and the courage it must take to lead with integrity. They were from worlds apart, yet they found common ground in the human experience: hard work, responsibility, and the desire to do right. They paused near a small fountain in the town square. He leaned against the edge, watching the water ripple in the morning light. She joined him, both enjoying a brief moment of quiet reflection. "Sometimes," he said, "it's nice just to watch things move at their own pace. The world doesn't have to rush all the time." She nodded thoughtfully. "It's easy to forget that. I spend so much of my life making decisions quickly, analyzing risks, and considering consequences. Pausing feels almost foreign." He smiled gently. "It's the small pauses that make life bearable. Even a few minutes of simplicity can reset everything." As they continued their walk, he felt a growing connection. It wasn't romantic or dramatic. It was something subtler, but no less meaningful. They were two people recognizing the weight and beauty of ordinary life, appreciating the honesty and warmth each brought to the moment. He realized that his small acts of courage, like approaching her in the diner, had opened a door to human connection that might otherwise never have happened. She began to share more personal reflections about the isolation that sometimes came with her career, the difficulty of finding people she could truly talk to, and the rare moments when she could just be herself, without expectation or judgment. He listened quietly, sensing the vulnerability beneath her composed exterior. It reminded him that strength and vulnerability could coexist, and that it was okay to show both. They walked toward a quiet residential street, away from the main town square. He pointed out his favorite local spots, small cafes, and parks where he sometimes took his child on weekends. She listened, asking gentle questions, genuinely interested in the small joys of his life. It was a simple exchange, yet it carried weight, bridging the gap between their very different experiences. At one point, they stopped near a small garden with blooming flowers. He crouched to point out a particularly vibrant patch of daisies, and she leaned in to get a closer look. The moment felt surprisingly intimate, not in a romantic sense, but in the shared appreciation of something beautiful and fleeting. He realized that connection could be found in the smallest details if both people were present and attentive. As the morning wore on, he knew it was time to think about getting her home. The conversation had taken them far from the diner, and he wanted to make sure she reached her destination safely. He felt a responsibility, not just for her safety, but for the trust she had placed in him by following his lead. "I think we should start heading toward your place," he said gently. "I don't want to overstep, but I want to make sure you get there safely." She smiled, a mix of amusement and gratitude. "I appreciate that. You've been kind, and I trust your judgment. Let's go." They walked together in companionable silence for a while, each reflecting on the morning and the unexpected connection that had formed. He thought about the courage it took to approach her, the small risks in life that could lead to meaningful experiences. She considered how rare it was to meet someone who could make her feel at ease, someone who didn't see her rank or achievements first, but saw her as a human being. As they approached her residence, he noticed the careful attention she paid to details, the slight hesitation at crossing streets, the way she observed her surroundings. It reminded him of his own vigilance with his child, always aware of potential dangers and responsibilities. It was a comforting similarity, a shared sense of care and attentiveness. Finally, they reached her door. He held it open, and she stepped inside, turning to face him. "Thank you," she said sincerely. "This morning has been unexpected but meaningful. I appreciate your honesty and courage." He smiled, feeling a quiet satisfaction. "It's nothing extraordinary. Just two people connecting, sharing a moment of understanding. That's all life really asks sometimes." She nodded, a thoughtful expression on her face. "It's more than I realized I needed. I'll remember this morning." He watched as she disappeared into her home, feeling a sense of completion and quiet joy. He had taken a small risk, followed a gut instinct, and in doing so, had created a human connection that would linger in both their minds. Walking back through the familiar streets of his town, he felt lighter, more confident, and reminded of the power of simple kindness and honesty. Returning to his routine, he reflected on the morning with gratitude. Life as a janitor and a single parent remained challenging, but moments like these gave him perspective and hope. The world was larger than his town, and people were more diverse than he often realized. But the fundamental truths of kindness, courage, and human connection remained universal. The woman in uniform had left an impression, not because of her rank or authority, but because she had allowed herself to be human, to share a small piece of her world. And he, in turn, had discovered that even ordinary gestures could create extraordinary experiences. It was a reminder that life's richness often came from unexpected encounters, from stepping beyond comfort zones and embracing the chance to connect with others, even for a brief moment. Highest positions. Humanity and connection mattered more than rank or duty. The day went on, and the janitor returned to his routine, but his mind was still on the morning's encounter. He felt an unusual sense of excitement mixed with calm satisfaction. Meeting someone so different, yet finding a shared human connection, had left a lingering warmth in his heart. Work awaited him at the high school, but he carried the memory of that morning like a small treasure. After finishing his cleaning duties, he found a quiet moment during his lunch break to reflect. He sat on a bench in the schoolyard, watching students laugh and chase each other. The world felt vibrant, full of movement and possibility, but he couldn't shake thoughts of the woman he had met. He wondered if she had made it home safely, and if the memory of their brief conversation stayed with her as it did with him. The janitor often thought about the courage it took to approach her in the diner. It had been a bold, almost impulsive move, but it felt right. He realized that sometimes life offered chances to connect with others in ways that broke routine and expectation. That morning was one of those rare moments, and he had seized it. Later in the afternoon, he found himself daydreaming while sweeping the hallways. He imagined the woman's life, the pressure she must face, and the responsibility she carried. He could sense her strength and discipline, qualities that fascinated him. At the same time, he recognized that she, like everyone else, had human needs, friendship, understanding, and the occasional respite from duty. As the day progressed, he thought about his own life and the ways in which it mirrored certain aspects of hers. Both carried responsibilities, made decisions that impacted others, and faced challenges that demanded resilience. The scale of their experiences differed, but the essence was the same: commitment, care, and the desire to do right by those who depended on them. When school ended, he walked home, thinking about how ordinary life could intersect with extraordinary people. He remembered the way she had smiled at him, the way she had listened and shared without pretense. It struck him that despite differences in status or lifestyle, human connection could flourish when honesty and empathy were present. At home, his child greeted him enthusiastically, and he set aside his thoughts of the morning to focus on family. They played a small game in the living room, laughing and enjoying the simple companionship that came from shared time. Even in the midst of ordinary life, he felt a sense of balance and contentment, enriched by both the small joys of parenting and the unusual encounter earlier in the day. That evening, he decided to take a walk to clear his mind. The town was quiet now, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. He wandered through familiar streets, thinking about the connections he had made that day. He realized that courage and kindness did not have to be grand gestures. They could be as simple as approaching a stranger with honesty, offering safety, and listening without judgment. He reflected on the conversation during the walk with the woman. Her words lingered in his mind, the sincerity in her voice, the acknowledgement of shared humanity. It was rare to meet someone who could both understand and respect your life without judgment. That morning had been a reminder that moments of genuine connection were precious and could leave a lasting impact. The janitor continued to walk, eventually reaching a quiet park. He found a bench under a tree and sat, letting the calm evening air wash over him. He thought about the fragility of life, the fleeting nature of encounters, and the power of human kindness. He realized that both he and the woman had taken small risks that led to understanding and mutual respect. As he sat there, he imagined how her day had unfolded. Had she reflected on their conversation as much as he had? Did she feel the same quiet satisfaction from connecting with someone who had approached her simply and honestly? The thought comforted him, reinforcing his belief that genuine human gestures could ripple outward in ways one might never see. He remembered a moment during their walk when they had paused at the fountain. The quiet reflection, the simple act of sharing space, had felt profound. He understood that connection was not always about words, but about presence, attention, and shared humanity. Even a few minutes of such attention could leave a lasting impression. Returning home, he prepared dinner and helped his child with homework. Life continued in its usual rhythm, but he carried the memory of the morning as a reminder of the broader world and the possibilities that existed beyond daily routine. It was a quiet joy, the satisfaction of having acted with courage and kindness, and the knowledge that human connection was possible in the most unexpected ways. That night, before going to bed, he reflected once more on the morning. He thought about the strength, discipline, and humanity of the woman in uniform. He realized that despite differences in lifestyle, status, and responsibility, the essence of life was shared love, care, resilience, and the desire to be understood. As he drifted off to sleep, he carried with him a sense of hope and quiet contentment. The morning encounter had reminded him of the power of simple gestures, the value of honesty, and the importance of seeing and being seen by others. It had been a day of ordinary duties and extraordinary connections, and he knew that it would remain in his memory as a moment of rare understanding and human warmth. The following morning, the janitor woke up with a sense of anticipation he had not felt in a long time. Life had returned to its usual rhythm, yet the memory of the woman in uniform lingered like a soft light, reminding him of the extraordinary connection from the previous day. He got up quietly, preparing breakfast for his child and packing lunch, all while reflecting on how unexpected encounters could change one's perspective. After seeing his child off to school, he made his way to the diner. The small, familiar bell jingled as he entered, and the smell of fresh coffee welcomed him. The routine was comforting, yet he couldn't help glancing toward the door, half hoping to see the woman again. Even if she did not come, the thought of their encounter was enough to bring a smile to his face. He ordered his usual and found a table by the window, allowing himself a moment to breathe and reflect. The diner slowly filled with regular customers, and the sound of conversation and clattering dishes created a comforting backdrop. He sipped his coffee, thinking about the value of small gestures, courage and honesty, all of which had defined his meeting with the woman. Later, as he walked toward the high school, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. That morning encounter had reminded him that even ordinary people could influence others in meaningful ways. It was not about grandeur or recognition, but about connecting with honesty and empathy. The thought bolstered his confidence as he started his day's work, knowing that simple human kindness could ripple outward beyond immediate perception out at school. He engaged with students and staff with the same quiet dedication he always had. Yet, he noticed a subtle difference in his own demeanor. He felt lighter, more open, and more willing to engage with others beyond the strict boundaries of his role. Conversations flowed easily, and small interactions carried a new warmth. He realized that the courage to act honestly and connect with another human being had renewed his sense of self-worth and purpose. After his shift, he walked home, thinking about the events of the past 2 days. He remembered the laughter, the shared moments, and the subtle understanding they had exchanged. Even the smallest gestures, the smile, the question, the moment of attention, had been profound in their simplicity. It reinforced his belief that human connection was built not on grand actions, but on presence, empathy, and respect. That evening, as he prepared dinner and helped his child with homework, he shared small stories from the day, infusing the evening with humor and warmth. Life's ordinary rhythm continued, yet it was now colored by the extraordinary memory of a connection that crossed the boundaries of routine and expectation. He knew that even if he never saw the woman again, the encounter had changed him, leaving an indelible mark on his perspective. Later, he decided to take a quiet walk through the town, reflecting on the lessons of the morning. The streets were bathed in the soft glow of streetlights, and a gentle breeze carried the scents of the evening. He passed the small diner, the playground, and the familiar corners of the town, each evoking memories of the shared moments. The walk felt like a meditation, a way to internalize the experience and understand its impact on his life. He paused at the town square, watching a few children play and neighbors chatting. It struck him how ordinary life held layers of beauty and meaning that often went unnoticed. The memory of the woman in uniform was now intertwined with the town, with the small joys and human interactions that defined everyday life. He realized that extraordinary encounters did not have to happen in grand settings. They could emerge in the quiet, ordinary spaces where life unfolded naturally. As he returned home, he felt a sense of gratitude. The encounter had reminded him of the importance of empathy, courage, and simple honesty. It had reinforced his belief that human connection could bridge gaps between vastly different worlds, creating understanding and warmth even in unexpected situations. He understood that life's richness came from both the ordinary and the extraordinary, from the daily routines and the rare, meaningful interactions that shaped perception and emotion. That night, as he settled down after a busy day, he reflected on the journey of the past few days. He thought about the woman, her discipline, her humanity, and the shared moments that had transcended social roles and expectations. He realized that true connection came from seeing another person without judgment, offering empathy and embracing vulnerability. Even briefly, he also thought about his own life, the responsibilities, the challenges, and the joys of being a single parent. The encounter had highlighted the value of his efforts and the importance of recognizing the small victories. It reminded him that courage was not always dramatic. Sometimes it was about being present, listening, and acting with kindness. Before going to bed, he wrote a few notes in a small journal he kept for reflection. He recorded the events, the emotions, and the insights gained from the encounter. Writing helped him process the experience, capturing the essence of the connection and its lasting impact on his perspective. He knew that these reflections would stay with him, guiding his interactions and enriching his understanding of human relationships. As he drifted off to sleep, he felt a profound sense of peace. The morning's encounter, the walk, the conversations, and the shared understanding had left a lasting impression. He had been reminded that life was full of unexpected opportunities for connection, that courage and kindness could create meaningful experiences, and that even ordinary individuals had the power to touch the lives of others in significant ways. In the days that followed, he carried the memory of the woman in uniform quietly within him. Life continued with its routines and responsibilities, but the encounter had added a layer of meaning and inspiration. He approached each day with renewed confidence, embracing the small moments, the interactions, and the potential for human connection that lay in the simplest gestures. He never knew if he would meet her again, but he realized it did not matter. The value of the experience was in the shared humanity, the courage to connect, and the understanding that even brief encounters could leave lasting impressions. He felt enriched, grateful, and inspired, ready to continue his life with renewed purpose, knowing that simple honesty, empathy, and kindness could create moments of extraordinary human connection, even in the most ordinary settings.